Welcome to Mondays with Mike, Game Changers in Lacrosse, where we cover topics related to lacrosse, education, and youth development. Today we're joined by Harlem Lacrosse's Chief Pathing Officer, Joel Censer, who also happens to be our longest tenured current employee. Thanks for joining us, Joel.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
So Joel, Chief Pathing Officer, I think is a sort of a unique job title. And I'm curious if you can share with the audience just what is your charge at Harlem Lacrosse?
Yeah, so we have 1,300 students in the program. They get this robust program director who's their lacrosse coach, their mentor, their support person. It starts in middle school, it goes all the way through high school. And we try to be there for students, obviously. And we try to be there in school, and we try to be there after school as their lacrosse coach. And then what we kind of do as the pathing office is wraparound support for those students and help them. Our charge at Harlem Lacrosse is depth over breadth. So we want to give an engaged, robust lacrosse experience for students for a long period of time. And that means helping them navigate school choice, where they want to go to high school, what they want to do after high school. Do they want to go to college? Do they want to, when they're in college, do they want to track to a certain career? Do they want to try something? Do they want to get involved in internships? So we're trying to create sort of robust pathways for our students to really live, to follow their dreams and find what they want, and use this passion of lacrosse and their relationship with a coach to then try to leverage at distinct points in their life to support them to find the right school for them, or the right path, or the right career, or the right internship, or the right college. So it's complicated. We're personal pathing means we try to know all 1,300 of those students, know what they want, who they are, what their dreams are, what they're about, what they need to really kind of like vault into this next stage of life, whatever that is. And we try to really like uniquely support those students to get there ultimately.
I want to get more into the specifics of what pathing looks like on sort of a granular level. But first, can you share a little bit of your background with Harlem Lacrosse? You've had a few different jobs since working here. How did you find yourself to the pathing office, and what does that office look like today?
Yeah, so I started at Harlem Lacrosse on May 15th, 2013. I was the program director at Frederick Douglass Academy's middle school, which meant I was the person for a number of middle school boys who attended Frederick Douglass Academy on 148th and 7th Avenue. So my job then was what the job of program director remains today at Harlem Lacrosse is about. I was the after school lacrosse coach, but that was really the leverage or the carrot to then be able to support those students during the school day, whether that was having daily study hall, whether that was knowing their teachers and what was going on in the building, and who was having a hard time with integers, and who was really struggling in chemistry, or I guess not chemistry in middle school, excuse me, but just really knowing what was happening in the pitter patter of school and being able to leverage my role after school as coaching a competitive, robust lacrosse experience, and using that to support students for a long period of time. So I did that for 2 years. It was the best job of my life. I had the best time coaching. When I started at Harlem Lacrosse, I had these visions of I really wanted to put in 10-man rides and play zone defense and win championships. And when I got there, some kids had never played organized sports before. I would see them wandering during games away from the sideline, or they couldn't, half of the team could catch. So it was really much more about, hey, how do I get these kids really enjoying and loving the sport like I do, and get them excited about it in a way where I can then support them in the other aspects of their life, in what was and oftentimes difficult moments in their life, whether in school or beyond. So then I took that role as as program director, and I got involved in advancement. I got involved in admissions. I was the chief program officer for a little bit, which kind of like helping how to build the program and what that looked like as we grew and expanded beyond to different cities. But then in 2021, I became the chief pathing officer, which is really, I had all these different roles at Harlem Lacrosse, whether development and fundraising and managing and all these other things, but really my passion was about admissions. At FDA, there was a high school attached to the middle school. So I got to stick with students for a long period of time, and I got to support them in different ways throughout, whether it was a middle school or wanted to go to boarding school or prep school, or whether as we started to dip our toes into helping at the high school more, beginning to help those kids apply for college or do recruiting and try to play college lacrosse. I started to get much more involved in sort of these admissions focused or helping students take the next step beyond what was just happening at the program. And that was really exciting for me. It was really fulfilling for me. There's no better feeling than helping someone find themselves and reach their goals and, help them find a landing place that ultimately they want to go to. So it's like been my life's work, and I couldn't be more grateful for it. I mean, there's no better, there's nothing better in life than helping people get where they want to go oftentimes, and against enormous barriers and inequity and all the things we know well. So,
can you describe a little bit about what your team looks like now at Harlem Lacrosse and how you work with program directors?
Yeah, so our pathing team is, I'm the chief pathing officer, so I sort of manage all of it. And really we really try to support students at unique times during their Harlem Lacrosse journey. So that means when students in each of our markets are going from middle school to high school, and whether they're joining from our middle school programs into our distinct high school programs and we're helping them get there, or if they decide to go to an independent prep school or a public magnet school, we help with the application process, we help with the communication with their family, and then we help on the college admission side, obviously, a lot too, which is, we have a full process of post-secondary support, helping students if they want to attend college, whatever they want to do for their next step. We try to understand that and make it work for them. We have local counselors now, national directors of pathing, that are in charge of each of our markets, whether in Baltimore, in Boston, in Philadelphia, in New York, or in Los Angeles. So those people are tasked with managing, sort of like knowing all the students really well now, and knowing their families, and understanding municipal and government funding, and understanding sort of like the context that's happening to allow students to whatever we need to know the right people in that space to help our students access those things in a given time. And then we have our college counseling. We have Amy Kirschenbaum, who is our college counseling guru, or whatever you want to call her, who really kind of helps us dive into that work. It's a little niche, it's a little idiosyncratic, and having someone like Amy, who has managed large college counseling outfits, whether at Harlem Children's Zone or at Goddard Options, has been uniquely helpful.
So can you give the audience just a little bit of a sense of scale about how many students are being supported on the admissions piece? You mentioned, some of the team is working on independent school, and some of the team led by Amy is working on the kind of post-secondary options. And about how many students are they supporting collectively, and what does that mean for each person's caseload?
So last year we had 100 students in our post-secondary support work, which means helping them, send them to four-year college, community college, trade, and then the whole team's involved in that. So Amy program manages that and helps support Josiah, who runs our New York and Boston, is the pathing director in those two markets, and Christine, who manages our Baltimore, Philly, and LA markets. So we were supporting about 100 students last year, and we in our college admissions post-secondary support work, and this year we're supporting 150 seniors. We also sent around 50 students to independent boarding schools. Lots of college access groups talk about sending students to college, or they went to this college. We're really focused on sending students to the right post-secondary landing place, and that's a lot about what they can afford too. The biggest reason students don't persist, whether in college or university or community college, is that they can't afford it. So
I want to get to the financing piece in a minute. At first, can you share a little bit, like sort of a typical, what does the support look like, maybe through the lens of like a typical applicant? First on the independent school side is, okay, so what happens? Student is identified, they think their family or the program director thinks that independent school could be an option. So what happens next from that point all the way to, enrollment?
Well, the great gift of Harlem Lacrosse, and what separates us from lots of other wonderful access organizations, but we're just different, is that we are with students for a long period of time, and we know who they are whether in school or on the field, or we know their families. So we just have a distinct understanding of what they could bring. Do they really want a competitive high school or college lacrosse experience? Do they really need an engineering program that's going to push them and they need to take higher level math and physics classes as part of it? They do they want to be down the street from their family? Do they want to go to California or go to, travel the world and see something different? So I think at the basis of any of our admissions work, it's understanding the kid, the family, their perspective, what they want, and building from that relationship and trying to leverage that. So independent school is really like we do the whole process soup to nuts. So we do an intake with the student, the family, what do they want, what are they looking for. We understand their finances, what they can afford. We understand their transcript, where they can get in. And then we try to make a list, help them with the application, and ultimately hope that they get funded to a level that they can find the right school for them and the right place for them.
And on the college admission side, to talk a little bit about what the process looks like. I imagine there's a lot of similarities, and what are sort of the key differences that you see?
Yeah, I think college is so much about your zip code and where you're from, and what your local municipality or your state, what kind of support they offer, like local students to the local universities or colleges. So that is a big difference, is sort of like the broader sort of like government support. But I mean, it's the same thing. I think in our college support work, we're thinking of it as a Venn diagram. We want to know, what do you want? What is appealing to you? What step do you want to take? Then the other piece is we want to know, what can you afford? How much is money going to play into it? What kind of schools can we look at, or what kind of places can we look at that are going to where you're going to be able to persist and thrive and pay and be able to financially navigate that place ultimately. And then the other place is just admissibility. Do you have the transcript to get into the school that you want to go to? So if we can throw the dart and hit those three concentric circles where you can get in, you can get a financial package that's going to work for you, and it's what you want, it's what your family wants, and it hits the most important essential variables, then we think that's a huge win for us, and that's what we're looking for in our college process. But the variability of it is just your zip code. I mean, it's different. I think we have a unique perspective at Harlem Lacrosse because we really are in these different cities and these different markets. So understanding how New York funds college is very different than understanding how California or how Maryland or how Boston or how Philadelphia, or how these different places, what options exist for students. So the big difference, I would say, is understanding local context in each and how to access those resources.
I want to get into some of these broader issues around college access. You've hit on finance being one of them. You mentioned the three-pronged Venn diagram. We would add lacrosse for the kids for whom that's relevant as a fourth sort of concentric circle or overlapping circle that needs to be a fit as well. And could you talk a little bit about some of the lacrosse outcomes and what proportion of the students that applies to that are making college choices based in part on the lacrosse fit or athletics in general?
Yeah, so about 100. We had 100 students last year who we helped support through the post-secondary support work. Half are on track or are planning to play college athletics. Not all college lacrosse. We do have students doing other NCAA athletic programs, but I mean, yeah, it's half, and I think it's something we shouldn't shy away from. We should be really proud of. I think the youth sports industrial complex that exists is making it's an imbalance. It's unfair, and I think the days of when we were growing up and where you could play at your local rec league and you could play at your local public school, and oftentimes that was enough to get recruited. That doesn't really exist anymore. Kids have to play on the club team early. A lot of times they get individualized training. So to say that we're going to be in public schools, we're going to put coaches and like robust athletic, but often also academic experiences within schools, and to make that meaningful enough where students are able to compete at that level and get those coveted college athletic spots it's not why we do this work, but it's the headwinds aren't in our favor, and we're showing that it can be done.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to think about post-secondary access as, a singular pathway, going to college, and think about both athletics and academics and the privatization that exists on supporting people with resources to get there, things have definitely changed a lot in the last 20 or 30 years, where there is entire cottage industry that if you have resources, you have many tools available to sort of optimize the outcome for yourself. And if you don't have resources, those tools are way less available. And because the spots are coveted and competitive, it puts people without resources at a distinct disadvantage, which is one of the things we're trying to overcome. And I'm personally very proud that, based on our track record, at Harlem Lacrosse, those things are available to you. If you commit yourself and want to engage in our program and stay with it through high school graduation, you will have the opportunity to go to college, and to go to college at a place that you can afford. And if you have the interest and aptitude to play lacrosse, that will be available to you in the same way that it is to those with the most resources in the world, which is, we're a small piece pushing against, I think, the broader market, if you will, but we are demonstrating that it's possible. It doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to live with this level of disparity in terms of who gets the best opportunities after high school. And I'm really proud of you and your team for the work that you're doing to make that happen. You mentioned finance and also sort of the regional nuance, that funding your college experience is highly dependent on where you live. So could you share a little bit about what some of those programs are, maybe EOP or HEOP, and what the nuances are and how we help students take advantage of those opportunities?
For sure. In New York, there's the Higher Education Opportunity Program, or the Educational Opportunity Program, or if you go to CUNY, it is SEEK. If you live in Maryland, there's the Guaranteed Access Grant. And if you live in California, there's A through G grants, there's EOP grants there in California. Pennsylvania has historically struggled oftentimes to understand low-income first-generation students, what that means to, what kind of levels of support they have to provide. And Massachusetts has sort of expanded the Mass grant. I'm trained in New York. I'm a New York counselor who just believes strongly in HEOP and EOP. I think it's a best-in-class program, and it's surprising to me that other states haven't run to adopt it, right? I think sometimes we can overthink what low-income first-generation students often need to persist and thrive in college. I think it's pretty simple. They need financing. If they can't afford the bills, they're not going to be able to stick around in college. And oftentimes, and they're going to need real supports on campus. And HEOP does that. There's a summer curriculum. Students are assigned a full-time counselor, a full-time cohort of students. They meet them the summer before their freshman year. And they really get to immerse with the staff, the students, and building those relationships and having the financing behind them to then be able to persist and thrive in school. Our persistence rates tell that story of immense success following that. So in our mind, I think, obviously, when New York students have this amazing gift of a state opportunity program that serves them well, where they are going to be funded, they're going to get programmatic support that's robust and long-lasting, and I think that's oftentimes really what it's about when you're thinking about. Because I think the students we serve are incredible. They're hungry for these opportunities. They're eager to be part of a broader community. They want to dive into studies and do deep learning and major in from engineering to history to liberal arts, and oftentimes be parts of robust athletic experiences at their school. But they need to be able to afford it, and they need to have people on campus and staff as advocates, and it will help them navigate what's oftentimes a new experience.
Can you describe what HEOP is and who benefits and how much the award is and what it allows?
Well, yeah. So HEOP is for the private schools in the state of New York, EOP is for the SUNYs, the state universities, and SEEK is for the City College of New York. For context, 80% of Harlem Lacrosse students are Pell eligible, which means they fall below a certain income. They fall below a certain income line, which means the government will provide some level of support for their college. 90% are Pell eligible, 80% have the lowest possible score on the Pell eligibility rankings. So it is so HEOP, if you fall in certain economic guidelines, then you will get, if you apply to the school and you're admitted, then you're going to get, again, summer program support. You're going to get a full-time counselor helping you navigate sort of the particulars of college, and you're going to get a full financial aid package that lasts for 4 years, and that is meant so you're not saddled with toxic loans and debt, and where you're able to, not have to think about the bills when you're at school or having to work, or you can really like dive in deeply into your studies and your extracurriculars and make the most of that 4 years.
So if you go to a private school in New York State, the taxpayers of New York State and you're a low enough income student, the taxpayers of New York State are funding your education. So
yes.
Those students will get their Pell Grant from the federal government, and then the remainder will be made up by HEOP.
Well, and some institutional grants, and there's some small. Sometimes it depends on the school on how much federal loans they'll oftentimes put through that. But
effectively, whatever the gap is made up by HEOP. So this
yes.
family is not paying any out-of-pocket dollars for tuition or room and board.
Right, and I think there's plenty of critiques that are totally reasonable about college. Number one is that it costs too much. There's plenty of articles you can read where schools cost $100,000 room, board, and tuition to attend. I think if students are able to afford it, oftentimes those 4 years offers a unique landing place for so many students. They're able to find important friends, they're able to build important relationships with professors, they're able to find what they really like to study, they're able to think about their future, they're able to do extracurriculars, say even like a competitive lacrosse experience that helps them have to navigate people and a coach and a schedule, and it oftentimes is a great primer for life, but not at the price of having to pay a lifetime of loans. And I think, so when we're thinking about college, we're not just thinking about how do you get this incredible experience that's going to be able to set you up for your future, but also that you're not saddled with a lifetime of debt, and where you can move, where you're going to have the same flexibility to move into careers or things that you want to do without having to immediately have to pay off hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
I'm personally very grateful for the work that you and your team have done to make college accessible in terms of the pathway. Okay, I can navigate the system that will get you to college, i.e. the application process, the testing process, the college recruiting process for athletics, but also accessible in the sense that this is something you can afford that you may not realize you can afford. There are some programs, maybe not as many as you or I would hope for in every state, but there are programs available to you and your family that will help fund college for you, which is a great investment for the taxpayer, because these are young people who enter the workforce and are doing amazing things and paying lots of taxes and will be amazing contributors to society over the next 50 years post-graduation. So, I'm often struck by the nature of the work that you and your team do that really, I would say, borders on social work. Ways that kids, based on their particular circumstance or the challenges that are happening in their life, need a little bit of guidance in terms of how to navigate the system in order to get the opportunities that might be best for them. So without sharing sort of like specific name of a student, can you share a couple examples that you think reflect, hey, when your team is doing good work that may extend beyond sort of a traditional college counseling support service?
Yeah, I think a lot of these college access groups are, they do great work, but they have a hard job. They get students at the end of their journey, and they have to know them really quickly and help them apply to schools, and they don't have full insight into their life and what's going on and what they need. So I think So 6 students this year were involved in some form of our cohort of 100 were involved in foster care, are involved in agency work, and every single one of those students were fully funded into college, oftentimes into specific foster programs where they get year-long housing and significant support as part of that. And the counselor wouldn't know the history of that student or what they've been through or what's going on, but we're supporting these students for a long period of time. We oftentimes can be there when things are happening. We then know the landscape to know what resources are available for those students and and it's right, they should be available for those students. The guidance counselor and college counselor shortage that's happening in this country is significant. People don't talk about it that much because we have plenty of other problems too, but some public school systems have a 900 to 1 kid to college counselor ratio. I think the national average at most schools is like 400 to 1 of a college counselor to one student. So to get that kind of like particular personalized, unique pathing support that every student deserves in this country, we're pushing against that and trying to support students in the unique way, or trying to support students in the unique ways that they need support.
Yeah, the foster care is a great example. I happen to know the story of one of those 6 students you referenced, and I remember some of the transition points in her foster care, leaving her home and entering, a foster home or going to live with a relative, and those were hard times for her. And she called her program director and said, "I'm struggling," and that was part of the way that we supported that particular student then. And then when it came time to apply to college, we sort of hopefully had a better understanding of what her needs were and what resources exist. Year-round housing is a great tangible example of just one more hurdle for a student like that.
Right.
If you age out of the foster care system, you have no place to go home to in the summer. And if you don't have a job, you may not have a place to live. Or if you get an internship, as many Harlem Lacrosse students do, it may not be that easy to just find housing. But having year-round housing from your university can be a huge advantage and prevent all kinds of bad outcomes. And it's a really important resource that is available and should be taken advantage of.
Right.
Yet if you're a 17-year-old kid in the foster care system, you may not even know to be asking for that kind of support. And so hopefully that's something that we can, a level of support that we can play. Another example that I've come into contact with a few times has to do with healthcare. A student we had a student in Baltimore who tore ACL, and just navigating how are you going to get surgery, where is the provider you're going to go to, how are you going to get PT. This is a student who can play college lacrosse and will play college lacrosse, but the difference between navigating something like that with a lot of resources and support and sort of knowledge versus not doing that or deprioritizing it could really make the difference between being able to play college lacrosse or not. And that's also part of the whole story. If you know that, hey, mom has a second job and getting you to your PT is going to be difficult. So we have to be thinking about, when we select a PT provider, how are you going to get there? Is it accessible by public transit? Is that something that Harlem Lacrosse can support? That kind of thing. Those are examples that I think where the personal pathing really extends far beyond just sort of a traditional college counseling experience.
I think also our scholarship program is something that I'm really proud of. So we met 99% of financial need for our 100 seniors this past year. But sometimes students, because of where they're from, or because of some tough years initially in high school, or because because they're middle income students and their parents they miss out on some of the levers that the government's created to make college affordable. It's really hard to get the full financial package that they need. It's just the math doesn't math sometimes. So our scholarship program is not built around, it's built around need. It's understanding, hey, it's a very small amount, but that 99%, it covers that 1% to make sure that every student who wants to go to college or to a funded post-secondary support work is going to have the means to do it. So I think having that nimbleness to know who might need that little extra here and there, or who might need a deposit payment, is really that defines our work. That nimbleness, that knowledge of student, that knowledge of family, that knowledge of market, and knowing who might need a little bit here and there. Obviously, we can't fund. It's not if we funded every college tuition for all 100 students, we wouldn't last a day afterwards. But when we're able to make real, meaningful impact gifts that can make sure a student persists and lasts during 4 years, I think it really distinguishes our work.
What's sort of an average award size for a Harlem Lacrosse scholarship if a student applies for a scholarship from our organization to cover that funding gap?
I'd say $1,500 to $2,000 oftentimes is really what it takes to make sure a student where finances don't become the beginning and the end of their time in school.
And you've seen situations where even that amount of money can really like trip up a student or a family and maybe even be the difference between staying enrolled and...
Or not even being able to sign a deposit. Like literally not being able to initially enroll in school because there's a deposit they have to pay that's $300 or $400, and the family may not have that. And if we know that, hey, these 10 students are going to need small deposit payments, and then either their financial need is met or they're able to take a work-study job and pay off the other amount, that is just another barrier that low-income students face trying to navigate college.
So we've talked a lot about finance, and it strikes me as sort of an issue that, is pervasive. College is very expensive, and the price of college has eclipsed inflation for a long time. And there's lots of scholarship around it, and lots of, as you say, articles you can read about why that has happened. But if you had to pick one other issue that is sort of pertinent to accessing college education today, aside from money, what would you say is are the other big issues, or just pick one big issue that makes it challenging for low-income students?
And in many ways, we support our public school systems very much at Harlem Lacrosse. Our high school programs are all at community public schools. And we want those students at those schools to get the same robust, high level of lacrosse experience that they would get going to many of our independent school partners. But oftentimes, for many of those students, especially the ones who have dreams of being an engineer or want to do high level quantitative work, there's not the sort of like coursework happening at the public schools. There's not AP Physics. Might not be at that school. Students might not get on the calculus track early. So it's with so many students in our pipeline who are deeply interested in engineering and robotics and computer science. I do think making sure our wonderful public school partners who do great job in many ways have the coursework to then make sure our students are able to access those opportunities when they've done the work and they're and obviously those tracks are like we need engineers in our country. We need people to be thinking about the world like that, and we need our public schools to be supporting many of our students to make sure that they're tracked to then be able to do that.
Have you seen a Harlem Lacrosse student that you felt had the sort of quantitative aptitude to really excel as a college student, but their transcript didn't line up largely because
every year
they just didn't have the offerings, or no one was telling them they should be taking those classes?
Right, both.
When you think about the pressures that are on the public schools in general and the schools that we're in that are in these high need communities, it's easy to see how that type of thing could happen. The role of the guidance counselor is often different in a large urban public school where they may not be doing as much sort of course counseling, personal pathing, if you will. They might be doing more social work type work, helping families access public resources, or if there's a fight on campus or something, dealing with issues like that, as opposed to, hey, you're a sophomore, you really need to be orienting towards this path because of what your goals are. You need to be doing that. That's an important issue. So I'd like to hit a little bit on sort of the very end of the path, personal pathing. I know we've done some support for students who are pursuing internship and career pathway. And could you share a little bit about what that looks like at Harlem Lacrosse today, and maybe some success stories that you're particularly proud of?
people like to talk about lacrosse's network, and hey, look, lacrosse provides such a network. But if you don't have an entry point into that network, like, is it really a network? Like, it feels like it's an exclusive club for a small amount of people. So I think philosophically, um, well, operationally, right? Like, if kids are at college, like, they should be thinking about the future. And we have incredible corporate partners and who are thoughtful and generous and benevolent in many different ways, and who want to be involved. And we have numbers of students who are future focused at college and who want to be part of companies or have big career dreams and aspirations. So the fact that we could just play matchmaker, it seems harder sometimes than it actually is. And we have incredible students who are eager to roll up their sleeves and get to work and do a wide variety of work in a wide variety of industries. And it's working. I mean, it's working from an operational standpoint, right? Because in students in college, what they need, oftentimes they need money, right? They need to make sure that they can pay for their classes, or if they want to take a summer course, or if they need to pay that deposit we talked about, or if they need pizza money, that they have that. And internships, we only work with paid internships. But it also provides, when you do an internship, it gives you a window into what do I like and what do I want to do? And not only that, how do I want to structure my college experience to then, like, help support that path and that journey. And so I think it's just been an incredible experience of really getting to support students, think about their careers, have meaningful resources to then support them on their journey. And then oftentimes, they do a great job and they get hired and they have their first job and they're building real skills for their future. So it's been one of the great joys to be able to support that work. And it's so wonderful to see so many students not only getting internships, but then getting full-time employment at a number of our corporate partners. So.
Yeah, it's been striking to me. Sometimes, we have these incredible kids at Harlem Lacrosse who have really unique and compelling stories, and sometimes they've overcome some hardship growing up. And when you see them excel, and you'll talk to the corporate partner, and they're thrilled about it because it seems unique, to have someone who maybe grew up in public housing or something working at their firm and performing at such a high level. And in many ways, it seems like it doesn't have to be unique. We know lots of great kids. There's tons of great 6th graders and 7th graders today going to summer camp at Harlem Lacrosse in one of these 5 cities that have those characteristics. They have all the same characteristics of the kids who are excelling in these internships and their full-time offers, but it has traditionally been harder for firms to access talent like that. They're not showing up and applying for the internship, or they may not have access to the network that, as you described, that is beautifully provided by the sport. And so that is perhaps one, slightly unintended consequence of what we started out to do at Harlem Lacrosse, but it's been really fulfilling to me to watch it all come to fruition. So, the scale has really increased. Like you said, we're going to support 150 kids next year. Could you share sort of, one challenge that's on your mind for the future of the pathing work at Harlem Lacrosse, and maybe one thing that really excites you about the future?
I think one thing that frightens me is just the intense headwinds that are against us. And it gets harder to navigate at scale. It gets a lot harder to navigate at scale. When you have 150 students and you want to get every single one fully funded into the place of their choice, it takes really good counseling to continue to leverage relationships, to know who they are and what they want and hit the bullseye, right? That's 150 is very different than when I was supporting 4 kids doing that. That's a whole different level of knowledge of student, family, and it requires, if we're going to be honest, no sports-based youth development program does this kind of future planning, pathing support work at scale. It's just the coaching, the stuff that we do every day, the lacrosse coaching, being there for students, this is a different skill set. It's something entirely different. We're going to be in schools and we're going to support kids every day, but on top of it, we're going to layer real immersive, college counseling, independent school support, internship placement, to be able to like intertwine those two things together is really complicated. And I haven't seen anyone else be able to do it because it's really hard. You have to leverage all these relationships. You're working in a college, like, like we talked about with the financing, a Pell Grant. If you get a full Pell Grant, it's $7,500. Colleges are now, like, these liberal arts colleges now cost $100,000 to go to. Like something's got to give here, right? And so it's I think we're working yes, there are state opportunity programs. Yes, a lot of those colleges that charge a lot have increasingly robust and generous need-based aid. Yes, there's certain things, and you have a government who's oftentimes not supportive of four-year colleges and students navigating this pathway currently. So this is uphill. This is hard work. This isn't preordained, and it's not meant to happen. Like, at the end of the day, like, I believe in our students, and I just kind of believe in the organization that, like, our ethos is when there's challenges, when there's headwinds, when there's structural injustices that make it really hard for our students to go to these $100,000 a year colleges on so many levels throughout their path, right? That we're going to fight, and we're going to figure it out, and we're going to do what we need to do. So I'm excited by just like the explosive growth of our organization, how we've been able to keep that ethos of being a relationship forward organization, how we've been able to really find a way to support students in the ways that they are looking to be supported, and setting them up for futures that make sense for them and their families. So yeah, I'm excited by like our organizational push to solve these really, really complex, hard problems that other people like that if it was easy, everyone else would do it.
Yeah, it's well said. I think that, we don't have time today, but there's a direct corollary to the youth sports environment, that the privatization of youth sports has made it more challenging for low-income people to access it. And if you consider a robust sports experience through 12th grade or access to college to be a pathway to wealth creation, to self-determination, ultimately, these are the levers that allow people to become the best versions of themselves and to achieve the goals that they have for themselves. They're important things for the world, and they're part of what makes America great. But we have some real disparity in how those things are accessed, and I hope that what we are proving at Harlem Lacrosse is it doesn't have to be that way. With a little bit of investment and this long-term approach, some great people, the expertise that you and your team have developed, and a lot of will. It's just like, are we willing to commit to these students? Really great things are possible. This type of inequity doesn't have to be there, and the kids are proving it every day. They're doing really great things, and they're developing into leaders in their community, at their jobs, and I am personally really excited for the next chapter. So I thank you for joining me. Thank you for the work that you and your team are doing, and looking forward to taking on these the next few years together.
Let's do it.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to Mondays with Mike, Game Changers in Lacrosse. We release new episodes on all major streaming platforms and the Harlem Lacrosse YouTube channel. To learn more about our transformative model and impact, visit harlemlacrosse.org.